welcome to another edition of CJ and CJ from the Basement. As usual, I'm your host CJ Massey, and to my left is CJ Long.
We're going to be covering the Chicago Bears today and how they look forward to improving upon their collapse due to the injury of Jay Cutler.
CJ, things started off so fine for the Chicago Bears last season. Started off slightly struggling at 2-3, but then reeled off 5 straight. However, in the 5th game is when the season really came to an end. Bears fans didn't know it at the time, but it really did. Jay Cutler broke his thumb covering an interception, and from there things tumbled downhill. It was the Bears were in trouble. 2 weeks later, after that, they had Forte went down with an injury. 2 weeks after that, Knox went down with an injury. We all know the story. Bears finish up 8-8, third in the division, and a healthy Bears squad we know is better than 8-8. They have the talent there to be better than 8-8. So a real key to this season, if they want to compete with the Green Bay Packers in that division, is staying healthy. If they can stay healthy, they may be looking at a better season than 8-8, and I think they can.
I mean, yeah, with Jay Cutler, they're 7-3 and on pace for at least a wild card berth. And who knows, the Giants might not have even made the playoffs if it wasn't for Jay Cutler going down with an injury. So definitely he's going to play a big part in this upcoming season with the strength of the Bears offense. They were a middle of the pack offense on the season, most of that in part due to once Caleb Haney came in to play quarterback. And they did nothing but upgrade that offense in the offseason. They obviously traded for Brandon Marshall, a big move, considering those of y'all who don't remember, Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall went crazy in Denver in his first few years in the league. So now they're reunited, and also their second-round draft pick, Alshon Jeffrey's out of South Carolina, a big-bodied target at the wideout spot. So right now, Jay Cutler's got nothing but weapons to throw to. The big question mark is going to come in on the defensive side of the ball. Overall, like the offense, a middle-of-the-pack defense. However, it's a tale of two tapes. Their run defense and their pass defense. Run defense, 5th overall in the NFL, and really shut it down. Now, that in part could be to the lack of run game of the two strong teams in their division, the Packers and Lions, who really don't have a run game. But once again, 5th overall in run defense, so that's really not a big deal. Pass defense, however, 28th overall, and really they did nothing to improve in the offseason. Their cornerbacks are fairly strong, but their weakness is definitely the safety position, as they had 8 different people starting at the safety spot over the course of last season, and that inconsistency is something that could hamper them in the 2012 season.
And it was not just that there was 8 different players out there, but it was all these combinations. One guy would start one day, the next Sunday somebody else would start, and then they would mix and match, and there was all this commotion in the secondary, and it seems like since the past few years, really, this has all been it's been an ongoing search to find consistency at the safety position.
Right, and another thing to highlight this inconsistency, their opening day starter at safety last year was a rookie 3rd-round draft pick who didn't have the time to go through OTAs, mini camps, and had a shortened training camp, and then he's thrown right into the fire right away, and then it just becomes a revolving door. And then, of course, you get torched by offensives like Matthew Stafford's and Aaron Rodgers. And, if you don't do anything to upgrade that in the offseason, then you're going to probably see the same results unless they're able to gel together. And that's in part why they probably made these big offensive upgrades, so they can try to keep up in the scoring with the Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Staffords. So we'll talk about that, their offensive line, and a few more points that are on Bears fans' mind coming up for Massey's Main Points.
I'm not afraid.
Yeah. It's been a ride. I guess I had to go to that place to get to this one. Now some of you might still be in that place. If you're trying to get out, just follow me. I'll get you there.
Hello and welcome back to CJ and CJ from the Basement. I'm your host CJ Massey, and to my left is NFL analyst CJ Long. It's time for Massey's Main Points. CJ, the first point that we're going to get into today is question that's it's on a lot of Bears fans' minds right now, and it's starting to become a little bit more clear, but there's still a lot of gray area there. What's going to happen with Matt Forte's situation?
Well, Matt Forte's situation right now in Chicago is a pretty sticky one. Forte's wanting market value along the likes of Arian Foster, LaShawn McCoy contract deal, 5 years, $45 million, right in that range. And the Bears aren't wanting to give him the money, and they didn't want to give him the money after last season. He decided to play through this year, got injured, and now he wants his deal because he was going to become a free agent. Bears throw a franchise tag on him, and right now he's still wanting a long-term deal. They've got until July 16th to get something done. If they don't, then Matt Forte's only option, or two options I should say, is to either sign the deal, which is $7.7 million for 1 year of playing, or not play at all, which, I highly doubt that's going to happen because $7.7 million talks. Well, if the Bears don't want to get anything done by then, we could see Forte walk or forced to play. However, Forte was recently quoted in the Chicago Sun-Times as saying that this process has left him scarred. So, if we see him end up having to sign the franchise tag, we could end up possibly not seeing him back in a Bears uniform for the 2013 season.
And with the Forte's production over the past few years for the Bears fans don't want to see him just walk away. They want to see the Bears at least make one final fair offer. And if Forte still thinks he's too good to play for the money that the Bears have offered, then they've done all they can do. But I think Bears fans really want to just make sure that they've put out everything that they can do to make sure he sticks around, because player his caliber, they want him in the backfield.
Oh, definitely. And with a season-ending injury last year, he still almost rushed for 1,000 yards in his time in the backfield. So that right there should show you what type of running back he is, even with a weak offensive line blocking for him, which we'll get to in a moment. But, one thing to keep in mind for the Bears is one reason they might not be so urgent to give him all this money is they've already got Michael Bush waiting, who has proven that he can be a good running back in the NFL. And so, they want Forte and his production there, but, they got to weigh their options, With the new collective bargaining agreement in effect and money being a factor for a lot of teams, maybe they're not willing to dole out as much because they've already got somebody there that can carry the load.
Exactly, and if Bush is already willing to play for the money that the Bears have already offered, it might, if nothing else, it really might put Forte in a situation where he knows that if he does not come back, if he does not sign the agreement, then this team all of a sudden becomes Michael Bush's, and he, if he's not playing at all, he certainly doesn't want to see any of that happen.
Well, and we all already saw Matt Forte coming out and saying he was kind of offended that they signed Bush in the first place, due to the fact that he feels like he's an every down back who can carry the load of a franchise. So coming up, we'll see what happens with it.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter who's running the football for the Chicago Bears team if the offensive line is not getting the job done. And that leads us right into our next main point here on Massey's main points. What's going to happen with the offensive line this year?
Well, the offensive line is a huge question mark. 27th in the league last year in terms of sacks allowed. They allowed 49 sacks on the year. And in the past 2 years, Cutler's been sacked over 100 times, and one of the highest in the NFL. And that's inexcusable. And when the Bears bring in weapons like Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffries, Cutler's got to have time to throw the football to him because they're big-time playmakers. And if you get him the ball, then good things are going to happen for your team. But if the line's not doing anything, who knows what's going to happen? And they did a few things to address it. They brought in Chico Rochelle in the offseason, a journeyman guard, and he's going to be able to step in right away and hopefully help a little bit. They have a second-year offensive lineman in Karimi, and we'll see what happens with him. Last year, a season-ending injury knocked him out after the second game of the year, so he's going to come back in full force. It's a young offensive line, and a lot of the coaches have been on record saying that in order for them to be good, they're going to have to gel together and improve as a unit, not just as individuals.
And it can't happen mid-season or late season. It needs to start in the preseason. And they need to show the improvement maybe even let those guys play an extra quarter, maybe even when second-string guys have already been around out there in the preseason, to get these guys some extra practice and get them working together as a team, because that's going to be a key factor protecting Cutler and whoever's running the football and getting time for the wide receivers.
Oh, definitely. And they're definitely going to need the time back there for Cutler to be able to throw the ball, because in a division that we've already stated has the likes of Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford, they're going to have to be able to keep up with other offenses, and the offensive line is the starting point for all of it.
So going into the third and final point in Massey's main points, we're going to go to the defensive side of the ball. The face of the franchise for years has been Brian Urlacher. He's become an instant fan favorite for the Chicago Bears nation. But, he's starting to get there in age, and he mentioned earlier, not too long ago, that the free agent market would sound enticing in the near future. What do you think the future is looking like for Urlacher? And is he going to continue to perform at a high level? Is it going to slip? Is his performance going to slip? What's going to happen with him?
Well, it's no secret that you can't beat time. He's 34 years old, his 13th year in the NFL, so eventually his performance is going to start to drop off. It's just a fact of life. However, at this moment in time, we haven't really seen a drop-off in performance. He's been relatively consistent, right around the mid-80s to upper 90s in terms of tackles for a linebacker. And, he's always been the captain of the defense, directing his players, calling all the shots, and making sure everybody knows where they need to go. Now, the question is, what type of deal will he be wanting after the year? Does he want one to carry out his career 5 years worth a ton of money to get him to 39 or 40? Because if that's the situation, the Bears probably aren't going to want to do it, because it's only a matter of time before his production begins to drop off. So, we'll see Urlacher play out this year, and I think the Bears will try to keep him around. But the question is, how long do they want to keep him around? And is that what Urlacher's looking for? If it's not, then look for him to probably jump out there and test the market, because he can always come back and sign with the Bears if they end up making a better offer. But it's all going to be determined by Bears management as to whether or not they want to put the money out there and put themselves on the line to bring him back.
And keep in mind, Bears fans, that Urlacher has come out already and said that he would like to retire as a Chicago Bear. So even if he does happen to go on, I would not be surprised at all. As a matter of fact, I would be expecting to see him come back at some point, even if it's just for a day, to sign a one-day contract so he can retire a Chicago Bear. That does it right here for Matthew's main points. Stick around for our next segment here as we go over to our Bud Light Bold predictions.
Bud Light presents Real Men of Genius.
Real men of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Airport Baggage Handler.
Mr. Airport Baggage Handler.
Why just set a bag down when you can throw it, kick it, or simply ignore it?
It's time for my lunch break.
SFO, ORD, LAX. The complex airport codes are almost unsolvable. But that's okay, because thanks to you, everything's going to Tulsa.
That's in Oklahoma.
When comforting a traveler about a lost bag or a treasured family pet, you need only remember 3 simple words. Airline not responsible.
Thank you for flying.
So crack open an ice cold Bud Light, oh king of the carousel. You give us all a reason to carry on.
Mr. Airport Baggage Handler.
Bud Light beer, Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis, Missouri.
Welcome back to CJ and CJ from the Basement. For those of y'all just joining our show, we're about to kick off a segment called Bud Light Bold Predictions. In this section, we'll give a few predictions for the upcoming year for the team that we're covering on that given day. Today for the Chicago Bears, I'm going to start off my bold prediction by saying that Brandon Marshall is going to have an explosive year due to his reuniting with Jay Cutler. Also, with Alshon Jeffries on the other side and a few other wideouts that can take some pressure off of Marshall in terms of coverage, I think he's poised for a Pro Bowl type season and the satisfaction of a lot of fantasy owners.
I agree 100% on that, and I'm going to say because of his play, as well as certain members, including the important ones such as Jay Cutler, Forte, assuming he's there. These guys staying healthy, I'm going to say that the Bears are looking at least 9-7, and I think that they're going to scare some NFC teams as far as the wild card goes.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a possibility. I'm going to go right around 10-6 on their record. Still not going to be enough to knock off the Packers for the division, in my opinion. However, I definitely think they're going to go at it with probably a team from the NFC East for one of those wild card spots. We'll see what happens, but things are looking up for Bears fans if things can stay consistent. And the pass defense can step up a little bit more than it has in the past. There you have it. That's it for the Chicago Bears. Join us next time on CJ and CJ from the Basement as we go over the Cincinnati Bengals.